21st century boys and girls. Today we are going to be baking cookies. So we're going to be using a lot of measurement, which usually comes around chapter 11 and 10 in our Go Math books, as well as fractions, which we did earlier in the year. So we're going to do a lot of important math facts today as we bake some. I'm making peanut butter chip, but you guys can make chocolate chip or peanut chip. It's totally up to you. So first I'm going to go over some of the ingredients that you're going to need. Pure vanilla extract. I chose peanut chips, but like I said, you could use chocolate chips, semi-sweet if you'd like. Totally up to you. 2 softened sticks of butter. The way I softened them was I just took them out of the refrigerator about 2 hours early so they can get more to room temperature. Salt, sugar, all-purpose flour, we need baking soda. I have mine in a bag just to keep it fresh. We needed 2 large eggs, which those of you who are with us on our field trip at my cousin Dana's house, these are actually eggs from her chickens. So thank you, Dana. We're going to use these for our baking today. And we're also going to need brown sugar. So here I have some dark brown sugar. Again, once I open the package, I put it in plastic just to keep it fresh. And I think that's it. Otherwise, I have my measuring cup, as well as I needed a teaspoon measurer today. So I'm gonna need a teaspoon measurer to help with some of those little smaller things that I need to add in. And I have 2 baking bowls, as well as my baking sheets for the oven. So first thing I wanna do, as I'm putting all the ingredients together, I'm gonna make sure nothing's in my oven, and then preheat the oven to 375 degrees. And I hit start. So as I'm baking, it's going to get up to temperature so that once I'm ready to go, I can put the cookies in to bake, okay? Next step, I'm going to take the smaller of the 2 bowls. I have 2 here to choose from. I'm gonna take the smaller one. I'm gonna start with my flour, okay? So I actually need 2 1/4 cups of flour. So I'm going to take my measuring cup because it's a bigger amount. And I want 2 1/4. So my measuring cup shows me measurements up to 1 whole. So I'm going to do 2 up to the 1 whole line, and then another 1/4, which is very tiny, tiny. I don't know if you can see it. So here's my 1 cup line. And down here all the way at the bottom is 1/4. So I'm going to do 2 whole cups and 1/4 of just flour to start off, and my smaller of the 2 bowls. And sometimes when you're pouring in, you might think you're at the measurement, but a good idea is to just shake it a little bit so all the flour settles. And then you always want to look directly on from the side to make sure that that measurement hits the line. Because if I'm looking up from an angle, sometimes the glass makes the number look different, like you're there, or you might be a little bit too high. So you always want to go level, and it's right at 1 cup. So there's 1. I need 1 more. Okay, and then I need my 1/4, which is a little bit left over. A little tiny bit. Might even be enough. Not quite. Okay, so there's my 2 1/4 cups of flour. Next, I also want to add in my baking soda. So baking soda, I need 1 teaspoon. So that's this little one here. You know you have a teaspoon with the abbreviation TSP. Teaspoons are smaller than tablespoons. Tablespoon is abbreviated TBSP. So they might look the same, but they are very different with baking. You don't want to add a tablespoon if you only need a teaspoon, so be very careful. Today it's TSP for 1 tablespoon of baking soda. And I'm going to mix it right into the same bowl that the flour's in. And next I'm going to need my salt, which is also 1 teaspoon. Okay. So what I want to do once these are all together is I want to mix them up so that the flour and the salt and the baking soda are all incorporated together. So I'm just going to mix them up a little bit. It's all powder, so there's no liquids yet in this small bowl. It's a good idea to mix the liquids and the powder separately and then combine them together when you do your baking. So just be careful when you read the directions, you follow that order. The actual recipe we're using today is a Nestle Toll House chocolate chip cookie recipe, in case you want to check it out in writing, or you can follow along with this video. Okay. So there is my dry ingredient mixture. Now, I'm going to take my bigger bowl, and I'm going to start off with my butter. So I have 2 sticks. If you look at the side of a stick of butter, it's really nice because it gives you all the measurements. Not sure if you can see here. So it tells you where to cut it if you want to go with teaspoons, tablespoons, or if you want, let's see, teaspoons, tablespoons, or if you want to go in cups. So this whole stick of butter here is actually 8 tablespoons, which is a 1/2 cup of butter. So your cookies are going to need a whole cup, so that's why we're doing 2 sticks, okay? So I'm just going to put these 2 sticks right in. And like I said, these are softened, so it comes off pretty easily. I want my second stick. Okay. So after my 2 sticks of butter, next I'm going to add my granulated sugar, which is this big one here. Just regular sugar you might put on like cereal or put in your coffee or something like that. And this one I need 3/4 of a cup. So 3/4. If you're thinking about $1, 3/4 would be 75 cents. It's 3/4. So I'm still going to use my measuring cup, and I want to make sure I don't go all the way up. I'm only going to the 3/4 fraction line, okay? So it's not as much. Okay. There's my sugar. And my brown sugar I need also 3/4 of a cup. I gotta take this one out of the plastic first. This one doesn't come in a nice container like the other sugar does. So brown sugar is a different consistency. It actually almost reminds me of a moon sand. So I gotta break it up a little bit before I put it in, but then I do wanna pack it back down as I do the measuring so there's not so much air inside. That is. I'm just going to push it down a little bit, get some of that air out. And that looks pretty good. Okay. And brown sugar and vanilla extract. So for my my vanilla extract. You can see here, it usually comes in a box in the baking aisle. It's just pure vanilla extract. And I also need 1 teaspoon of this. Okay, now I'm going to use my blender and I'm going to mix up this one with the butter, the sugar, the brown sugar, and the vanilla extract until it's nice and creamy. I like to turn the bowl while I'm mixing to make sure that all of the ingredients get incorporated. Nothing gets stuck on the bottom. Oh, I'm going to take a break for 1 second because it looks like Amara just came in. Hey, Amara. I'm actually baking cookies right now and I'm recording a video. So if you're interested, I'm baking peanut chip cookies and you can do chocolate or peanut chip, but it's totally up to you if you want to follow along, okay? I already started a little bit. Daisy is very curious about making these cookies. So when I mixed it up, it got to a nice, pretty creamy consistency here. So this is my liquid mixture here. And now I'm going to mix in an egg one at a time. I don't want to put them both in at the same time because I want to make sure they mix up all together. So I'm going to mix in 1 egg. Give it a little bit of mix. And then my other egg. This would be a lot more handy if I had one of those stand mixers. Okay, mix it up again. And this time we want to make sure we mix it all the way through so the eggs are totally incorporated. Okay, so I have my 2 containers. I have one with all my dry ingredients and one with all my wet ingredients. The only ingredients I have not used so far are my peanut chips here, but I don't want to use these at all until the all the way end because I don't want them to get broken up. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my flour mixture a little bit at a time. So I'm going to mix in about half of it. Mix it up. Starting to thicken up. It's not as creamy. my dry mixture. So the tricky part at the end is to make sure you get as much off of the mixing beaters as you can. So I pull it up a little bit out of the mixture and then I let it keep going so it hits the top of the bowl and not all over my shirt. That's a little tricky. Sometimes I like to wear an apron or something to protect my clothes, but I knew this one wasn't too hard of a recipe. So next step, I'm going to mix in my bag. I'm using just regular Reese's peanut chips. At the store, you have so many options. So the recipe up to this point, you could put in chocolate chips, you could put in peanut chips, you could put peanut chocolate ones. I've seen all sorts of different ones, but I'm using these ones because they are extra, extra delicious with a cold glass of milk. Now what I'm going to do this time when I mix them in is I'm not actually going to use the blender. I'm going to use the fork again because I just want to make them spread throughout. I don't actually want them getting cut in half or anything like if I would use the mixer. Got some on it. So I'm just going to spread the peanut chips through and try to make them even throughout. Would not be so fun if you had a whole cookie with no chips in it. But by using the whole bag, you should have a pretty good chance to get all of your chips incorporated throughout your cookies. If you wanted to do peanut and chocolate, I would just cut the bags in half and try to use a half a bag of chocolate and a half a bag of peanut. Unless you love chips so much that you want to be extra chips. That's also totally up to you. Okay, so that is the end of my actual recipe. What we do next, now that it's all together, is I'm going to bring over my baking sheets and we're going to bake them in the oven for about 9 to 11 minutes. All ovens are a little bit different, so this is the tricky part. You gotta watch them. You wanna make sure that the bottoms are nice and golden brown, but you don't want them to be burnt. I'm actually using some nice new baking sheets. I'm pretty sure Miss Connolly gave me, so that you can see here. I'm gonna put them on here so that they don't stick to the pan. So what you're going to do is I can take my fork, and I want to get just a little bit here, you can see, and I'm going to put my cookie into a little ball, and I'm going to put them on the baking sheets spread out so that when they settle down and they form the cookies, they don't all run together. I'll show you here. So you can see how I spread them out a little bit. When they form and they start to get warm and they settle in the oven, they're gonna make pretty little circles, and I don't want them to all be one big cookie. So the next row over, I'm gonna stagger them. And some people like their cookies a little bigger, some like them a little smaller. It's up to you. Sometimes I even put my cookie recipe, my mixture here in the refrigerator for a little bit to cool it off and to make it a little bit harder. But that's totally up to you. It will keep if you put it in the refrigerator. You just want to make them in a couple days. Who wants to wait for cookies? not me. So now you can see as I'm going, I'm spreading them out throughout my pan so that they don't all mix together. I'm going to finish this one and put it in the oven, and then we'll see what's next. So generally this recipe, I would have to fill up my pans. I have 2 pans that I can put in at the same time. I would probably make about 4 pans worth, but it all depends on how big I make the cookies. Okay. So here you can see the cookies are all ready to go in the oven, but I'm going to fill the second pan so we can put them in at the same time. You don't have to make perfect balls here. You don't have to like make them like a perfect sphere because they'll settle down once they're baking. But you do want them all to be close to around the same size. If you have one that's a little bit too big, you can just grab a little bit off the top of it. Or if you have one that's too small, you can just add a little bit to it. Once you follow the recipe and the measurements, it's your choice on how big to make the cookies. Okie doke. So here I have my second round. So I'm going to put all these in the oven. Then I'm going to start the timer so I don't forget, because sometimes I get distracted. I'm going to set it for 9 minutes to start and check them. If they need a little bit more time, I'll check them again at 11, but sometimes 9 is around the magic number. So in my batter here, you can see I'm about halfway done and I need a little bit more, but I can probably do 2 more trays. So I'll know they're done when I use a spatula and I open them up and I just lift one little cookie to see if it's nice and golden brown on the bottom. Then when I bring them out, I put them, it's going to be very, very hot. So I'll put them on top of the oven on like a mesh metal baking tray to help them cool down. And that's when they'll get hard and nice and delicious to eat. So this is how we made our peanut chip cookies. I'm very excited to try them in about 9 minutes. I hope you guys can make some too. So I'm going to turn off the YouTube now.